So we are now recording. And I'll tell you what, Louis Ferris has got some really good marketing. I read the piece he did on promoting this on Facebook. I was like, last night at 9:30. I'm like, man, this guy's awesome. He missed his boat. I think he missed his calling a little bit. He should have been a copywriter. Copywriting is not necessarily as exciting as being in the lending business. That being said, Louis, everything you did last night was awesome. And when you see Corlin, who said she was going to be here for this, and I don't see her, we're going to have a conversation with that young lady about it, all right?
We'll definitely do that. Absolutely.
All right. So, guys, we're going to talk about forbearance today. And I've got some slides I'm going to share with you. We mapped this out. The word map is going to be in this a lot because the MAPS coaches created this. And it is kind of like a map to walk through the process of what it's going to look like and what the options are for forbearance. Now, who is not familiar? Is anyone not familiar with the term forbearance? Okay.
I'm not.
Perfect.
I'm not.
So here's in a nutshell what a forbearance on a mortgage is. It's where the lender gives you a period of time, usually 3 months, with no mortgage payments. And it's done if you're in the middle of a financial hardship. And right now, with the COVID-19 virus, there's a lot of forbearances going on because a lot of people have been furloughed and so forth. Typically speaking, when you are in forbearance in a normal market, your credit report will reflect that you're in forbearance, and you will then be essentially prohibited from financing property for a year. That's correct, right, Louis? Okay. So you'd be prohibited from financing property for about a year if you have a forbearance on your credit report. At the end of the forbearance term, you have to make good on your past payments. So if you have a 3-month window where you're not making payments, on the 4th month, not only do you have to pay your 4th payment, but you have to pay 1, 2, and 3 in order to bring the loan current. If not, your loan goes into default. And when it's in default, we all know what can happen at that point.
Can I just ask a quick question about that?
Go for it.
Okay, so because I want to make sure I hear this right because I'm already preparing social media ads on this.
Yep.
If for forbearance, there's 90 days.
Yep.
The end of the 90 days, I know you've got to pay it back. However, if you apply for the forbearance and then let's say you put your house on the market and sell it and you need to buy another house, you can't get a mortgage on that other house for another year because you received the forbearance?
Yep.
Is that correct, Louis?
Yeah, Louis Ferris, unmute yourself. Keep yourself unmuted for this because you're going to be involved in a lot of this.
Yeah. Can you is that accurate?
Yeah. In order to obtain any conventional financing after entering into a forbearance agreement, the requirement was, up until this week, was 12 months. I think we're probably going to touch on that later. But you are correct in that you would be restricted to not being able to obtain financing until a certain time frame lapses.
On a conventional loan.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily an FHA. So, okay.
Maybe. There's a lot of question marks.
FHA kind of has their
wow.
own. HUD came up with their own, and they were the first to come out with a policy that would allow for people to not feel the negative impacts of a forbearance. But the thing that I think we should keep in mind is that FHA loans aren't very popular in our market, dealing with people generally who have down payments and that sort of thing. So the bigger impact is going to be conventional stuff, for sure.
So in a typical market, we don't deal with forbearance a lot. Especially the past 4 or 5 years, we've had a really solid job market. It has not been a challenge. Okay. And to Brian's point, forbearance is not specific to mortgages. A forbearance is just a short-term, it's not even a modification to a loan. It's a short-term agreement to not make payments on any loan. It can be on a car loan, a student loan, a mortgage, anything. Now, today we're talking specifically on the mortgage side. So right now, I am going to share a couple screens with you guys. So let's make sure we get the right ones. Okay. So right now, you can look right in the middle. 7.3% of loans are in forbearance. Approximately 3.9 million loans are in forbearance, and that's growing every day. There is no way, to quote what we have on the screen, on God's green earth, that banks have the capacity, let alone the willingness to negotiate 3.8 million homeowners in the next 90 days. They have no incentive to do so, and there's nothing requiring them to do so. So when we're looking at that, the lenders they've got no reason to do it. What they want to do is they want to make their investors whole. And you know what? You know what the investors want? They want to be made whole. So the big question is for those people that are in forbearance, why did they go there in the first place? Probably because they're furloughed and they can't make their payments. So at the end of 90 days, do you think somebody that is still furloughed is able to make their payments? No. What's going to happen from there? That's where it gets really, really disconcerting. And knowing the different directions that this can go and the different motivations behind it is what we want to talk about. So I'm going to share a screen with you right now that is, frankly, it's quite huge. You can see it goes all over the place, all right? This is what we developed up in the MAPS coaching program. So to give you an idea of how big it really is, here is all of the things that can happen in a forbearance. So let's talk specifically. We're going to go through each one of these. Somebody who's in forbearance, if they're employed, all right? So what are their options? Well, if they're in forbearance, they could do a cash out refinance. If they're employed, you can do that. Instead of going through a forbearance, you can say, you know what, I want to refinance the property, drop my payment, see what I can do. I am doing that right now. I'm doing it with Lewis, and we got the full underwritten approval 7 calendar days from the date we made application. So cash out refinancing is absolutely an option. Somebody who's considering this, let me move the, so just so it doesn't look like I'm looking weird, I'm going to move you guys back over here so I can see. It looks like I'm looking at you anyway.
Excuse me. So
Yeah.
that's instead of, you're doing a refinance instead of with the bank.
Yes. If you're
Okay.
employed, Joe, you can refinance without having to go through a forbearance.
Just wanted to clear that clear.
Yep.
It's not that you've gone into forbearance and finance afterwards. This is instead of.
Right. So they're going to need financial counseling and negotiating with the creditors, especially if they're having a drop in income. A dual income family goes down to 1, okay? Who are the sort of people that you need to talk to and you need to put them in touch with on financial counseling? Well, maybe they need to be having a conversation with their CPA or their financial planner, because most people, I'm going to get down a little further on the page here, most people have assets that are tied up in other places that could help them out of going through a forbearance and possibly losing the equity in their home. Somebody just makes the decision that they want to investigate forbearance and understand the repayment terms. There are 4 scenarios right now that we've been able to find and define. 1, you defer the payments and tack them on the end of the loan. That's really easy. It's simple. If every lender would just say, nobody makes payments for 3 months, we'll just put it on at the end of the loan, problem solved. How many people here think that is actually reality, that would happen? And it's not the lenders, okay? The lenders, by the way, are currently being compensated by the government for putting people into forbearance. All right, the servicers. Let me rephrase that. It's not the lenders, it's the servicers. Loan servicing companies are being compensated $500 per loan to put them in forbearance by the government. So the servicers are getting their profit. The one who isn't is the actual investor in those loans. So the investors are going to start pushing back, saying, well, we've got this money out there, it's not working for us, that's not what we signed up for. There's a mechanism in place to protect the investors. So chances are they're not going to be really happy with tacking it on at the end of the loan. Option 2 is deferred payments spread out over a period of time. That we're starting to hear some chatter. For instance, if you have a 3-month forbearance, then once it's over, you have 3 months to repay it and to make good. That goes back to the original question. If you're having a hard time making your payments now, do you think in 60 to 90 days you're going to be able to make a double payment? Not without dipping into some funds somewhere or finding money under a mattress. If you're not making it, you're going to have a difficult time making double. Does that make sense? Okay, here's the best one. Let's go into forbearance. We don't have any terms. We'll figure it out later. That scares me. And Lewis is smiling because he's seen it. Okay? That scares me. I never want to enter into a contract and say, oh, whatever. We'll just figure it out. Because what'll happen is they'll figure it out in their best interest, not necessarily in everyone else's best interest. And then the one,
you guys, coming from my background and being in the retail mortgage banking side, with two of the top 2 largest mortgage servicers in the nation, even at that level of loan servicing, there's still a ton of misinformation in those loss mitigation departments when people call in asking for information on these forbearances. I can assure you that they're not getting the full details of what the true ins and outs are of that program. So if you're having these conversations, in your care calls, you really need to encourage them to get the full details of that agreement before they agree to go into it. Because these people on the phone, their goal is to just get people to agree to it verbally. And then, like John said, they're going into it and they really don't have any details of what the ramifications or what the details of the program are.
We are trained from birth to protect ourselves, right? And we have an opportunity for short-term protection right now. The whole purpose of this class today is, what are the long-term ramifications and what are we giving up in the future, and is it really worth it? All right. And there's a lot of stuff coming up in the chat window. I'll get to that, guys, here in a few minutes. All right. Let me get through this first section and then we'll go address questions before moving on. So now somebody has entered into forbearance. How do you help them? Well, guess what? They have to prepare for repayment. We are right here in the middle of the screen. Let's prepare for repayment. Maybe they've got savings and then they can go ahead and they can repay it. Great. Well, if they don't have savings, you can pull money out of your retirement account right now, up to $100,000, and you have 3 years to repay it without penalty or taxes. Here's the big challenge. Stock market historically returns about 9% a year. It's less than that if you're in a taxable account. These are retirement funds. These are not taxable funds. So that means you don't have to worry about paying any dividend tax or income tax on anything that investment is currently earning. So 9% is a reasonably accurate expectation over a long period of time for your stocks to return. So somebody who's 40 years old and they have, let's say they have $200,000 in their 401k and they can pull 50 grand out to recover from this. And then they decide that they can't repay the 50 grand in the 3 years. They're going to have a taxable event. Here's the more serious issue with that. What is the future value of that $50,000 for somebody who's 40 years old when they retire at age 68? Does anyone want to take a guess? Unmute yourself and toss out a number, guys. 50 grand, 28 years from now is worth how much?
Probably about 30
Probably about how much?
30 grand.
I say 250.
Okay. I've already done the math, so I'm cheating. It's $800,000. Thank you, James. That's the reaction I want. $50,000 doubling every 7 years, because now it's going to double at 47. It'll be 100. At 54, it'll be 200. At 61, it'll be 400. At 68, it's $800,000. So for somebody to advise somebody to take money out of their retirement account in order to preserve $50,000 in equity or $100,000 in equity in their house might not be giving the best advice. I would not want to take nearly $1 million away from my family over a situation like this. So how do we solve it? Well, now we start asking some questions. Were you thinking about selling in the next 3 to 5 years? Catherine, unmute yourself, please.
Okay.
Let's play through this. Catherine, were you considering selling your home in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yes.
Okay. Now, given the fact that you're currently dealing with the forbearance issue and you're thinking about selling in the next 3 to 5 years, with the 4 million homes that are currently in forbearance, and there are expected to be another 3 or 4 million that go into forbearance before this is over, what do you think is going to happen with those loans? Do you think that they're all going to be made current, or that there may be a good portion of them that end up going delinquent?
I believe the majority will go delinquent.
So what happens if they go delinquent? What's the next step?
Foreclosure procedures begin on all the homes.
Okay, and then when the banks buy the homes, are they in the business of owning real estate?
Absolutely not. They're going to unload them.
They're going to unload them. So is that going to increase or decrease the inventory in the market?
It's going to increase the inventory in the market.
So, and guys, off script for a second, we're going through this real quick because we're all in this business, so we can shorten it a little bit. So if it's going to increase the inventory, what's that going to do to prices?
Bring them down.
So does it make sense for you to wait 5 years to sell your home, or would you be better off selling now, banking the proceeds, and buying back in a few years when the prices drop?
Buy back in a few years when the prices are lower.
Don't forget preserving the credit.
Color.
Too.
And
Yeah,
preserving
I
the
was
credit.
just going to say, man, you protect your credit if you do that. That's
Yes.
like huge.
All of this protects the credit and protects their future. Okay? This is a really long-term play here, guys. We are not talking about let's solve a 3-month problem. We're talking about solving a life problem. Somebody that is potentially losing $800,000 over the course of their life to save a couple $1,000s now on a forbearance agreement, that's not wisdom.
No.
And most people aren't thinking about the long-term play on this.
Well, John, I think more than that is that people weren't educated really about what the forbearance really would do to them. Because I know my daughter Diane was going to do that. And I just was like, stop. You are not doing that. And I put in touch with her a financial advisor in Boston. And it was like, put the kibosh on it instantly. Just said, no, don't do it. People who are in forbearance right now who have done that, I honestly believe that the majority of them have absolutely no idea what the ramifications are for what they just didn't, they don't know.
So what happens if that person has been furloughed or laid off? All right. They're unemployed. You can see that this map gets a lot more convoluted.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they need financial counseling. We can ask questions to get them started. We're not CPAs. We're not financial planners. that is going to be left to their professionals. They're faced with the same decisions, the same 4 options on a forbearance. They have the same challenge. Let's prepare to repay this. What can we do? So, Lewis, you're in banking. What are the odds of somebody getting a personal loan that doesn't have a job?
We'll put it this way. These are the odds of somebody with a job. Traditionally, the banks are only going to lend up to 10% of the person's gross annual income.
Yep.
So not only are they tough to get, they're not going to lend much. And that's in a best case scenario. If somebody's unemployed, it's not going to happen at all.
Okay. Well, now we have the option of looking at their reserves or their savings to repay that. If you are out of a job and you could dip into your reserves or savings, but how many months of reserves are you going to use to bring this current? It's a great question. There's not a lot of people that are going to have, when most people can't afford a $500 emergency, the ability for them to be able to live off of their savings and make good on the forbearance is very slim. That brings us to 2 other options. And let's start on the left-hand side, the retirement funds. We covered that. Are they willing to give up their retirement to be able to save the property now? Well, guess what? In bankruptcy, they have homestead protection. What's going to happen with bankruptcy, Lewis?
Say that again.
Somebody goes through bankruptcy.
Ah,
You've got 7, 11, and 13. So what are the ramifications on their credit?
well, 10 years. It's going to be a negative impact on their credit for 10 years. And the minimum waiting period for a mortgage is going to be about 3 years on average.
Yep.
Best, before they can look at getting back into the market.
So bankruptcy is an option. Is it the best option? The other thing they can do, instead of repaying the forbearance, is sell it. Now, when you sell it, guess what? You get people in 2 positions, those with equity and those without equity. The difference today versus 12 years ago is there is equity in real estate. Back in 2008, people used their homes as an ATM because it was like a money tree. It rained and the house was worth more. So they were just pulling every red cent out of it, spending it on, we've all seen it. So let's talk about those with equity. Now, the advantage or disadvantage of being colorblind is one of these columns is good and one of them is not so good. I'm going to have to read to be able to figure out which ones it is because, I can't tell you.
Left is good.
Thank you. That's what I figured. So you got an equitable position. Guess what? You sell before going into default. What's happening? First and foremost, if you sell before going into default, you're preserving your credit, right? The bank is getting 100% of their proceeds. You get the balance. You get the full equity position in the property back, which gives you the ability to rent until the market settles down, settles back in, and you can possibly buy in the future at a lower price.
When you're in forbearance, when are you actually in default of your mortgage?
That depends on
Wait,
this question mark. Okay.
which question mark? I can't see that.
These 4 options. What's your forbearance terms?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you're in forbearance, typically it will immediately go on your credit report and you've got a year wait. All right.
Correct.
With COVID-19, it is not supposed to be referenced on your credit report. I confirmed that with the head of mortgage training for TIAA Bank last night over dinner because it's my wife. So I can get some of these inside informations on these things. That being said, I think now would be a good time. What's that?
Can you explain that a little more as far as the impact on your credit score? I'm not following that.
We're about to, okay?
Okay.
The government has said that due to COVID-19, you cannot report negative credit items for certain things, and forbearance is one of them. However, credit reporting agencies have gotten pretty sneaky. They've got this wonderful thing called artificial intelligence that can track trends. Lewis, why don't you explain what's happening with that?
Yeah, so the scoring models amongst the 3 different credit bureaus are doing exactly that. You know, they're intelligent enough to be able to track trends and reflect trends within their algorithms. And so, you know, even though there isn't a negative reporting per se when somebody's in forbearance, there's also no on-time reporting during that time frame either. And so there's a gap of payments that this scoring model is going to pick up on. And not only that, there is a mark on every account that is included into a forbearance, and that tag will remain on there that says it was included in a forbearance. So yeah, it may not be a negative mark, but when future creditors go to look at it, they're going to see that there was a financial hardship and this person couldn't make their payments.
Yep.
So there's a indirect impact to the credit as well.
So just because it's not being reported doesn't mean it's not being seen. And if it's being seen, it becomes detrimental. So the other option, if you have equity in the property, is instead of being proactive in selling it, you go to a foreclosure sale. And you can see that it gets really bad here. Public sale, the bank's going to get their money, bottom line, okay? Typically what happens at a foreclosure, I don't know if anyone's been to a property auction and actually had a property auctioned off in front of them. Let's say the home's worth $400,000 and they've got a $250,000 loan on it. Well, the bank is going to have a representative there bidding at the auction. And they are going to bid it right up to what is owed on the property. And then they will stop bidding. Then an investor is going to come in and they're going to realize that this house is worth $400,000. The bank just stopped bidding because it's pretty easy to figure out who it is. They'll come in and say, we bid $250,723.14. There's the bank. Auctioneer then calls for more bids, and all of a sudden someone says $260,000. No one else bids. That investor just bought the property for $260,000 plus some added costs. The bank got their money. The difference in this case is about $5,000. That's what the previous owner gets, the leftover. They don't get the full value and all the proceeds of that property. They get what is ever is left over. And in this case, it's $100,000 to $150,000 shortfall by letting it go to foreclosure. Obviously, drastically reduced proceeds. Credit is wrecked. And when I say wrecked, it's wrecked. Back in 1998, I went through a bankruptcy personally. One of the joys of living in Massachusetts and having a hard time having kids, spent $100,000 on infertility, and it crushed us. And it took me the better part of 14 years to recover from that. So I know personally what can happen in going down this road, okay? You're going to rent for 3 to 5 years. You have to rebuild your credit and buy back in. And the chances are you'll be buying back in on the next top cycle, because that's the time frame that these waves tend to go in. 3 to 5 year cycles in real estate. So far, so good. Now we have the no equity position. And what does that look like? That's even more convoluted. You've got no equity. Well, you know what? You can sell it before you go into default. Beg, borrow, whatever you need to do to get the cash to go to the closing table. You've preserved your credit. That's the most important thing in all of this. And then you can buy back in at the downside. Again, if somebody has no equity, well, they might have the cash to make up the difference. They might not. They might be able to find it. That's about the only option. So the next step is you go to a short sale. They don't have the equity. What happens here? Well, one, the deficiency isn't forgiven. The bank goes to court and gets a judgment and says, you still owe us $40,000. I can't pay the $40,000. So in order to get rid of that $40,000, I have to go bankrupt. It ruins my credit. I'm renting for 3 to 5 years in order to rebuild the credit and buying back in at a less than desirable interest rate. Or the bank says, no problem, we'll wipe the slate clean. You don't have to worry about the $40,000. Well, guess what? You just got a $40,000 raise because that gets reported as earned income. You will get a 1099 in January that says, here's $40,000 for free. And guess what? That's going to put you in another tax bracket and create a tax problem. Very important in the middle of the screen, right here. Taxes cannot be included in a bankruptcy. So over here, you get to get rid of everything. Your credit is wrecked. Over here, you think you're getting rid of everything. And it kind of delays the pain. And you still get saddled with that tax bill. That's going to be a $15,000 tax bill on that debt forgiveness. Well, will there be a mortgage debt forgiveness? Who knows? That's actually an act of Congress. That's not a joke down there. It does require an act of Congress to do mortgage debt forgiveness and avoid the earned income. So if that were to get passed, it would release the former owner of the tax debt. So how many believe that we can get two parties, as divided as they are, to agree on anything, especially something this important? I don't have the faith in that. What happens? Your credit's destroyed. You're back into the 3 to 5 year process before you can own again. You have to go through the rebuilding and buy back in. Well, no equity, and off on the right-hand side, you get foreclosed on. It's the exact same thing on the other one. The bank is going to sell it. They're going to get as much as they possibly can. And, oh, guess what else? You still owe the difference in this case. So you're going to get a deficiency judgment against you. It won't be forgiven, and you have a choice of paying that over years and having your credit destroyed and renting, or you can go bankrupt and have your credit destroyed and renting. Foreclosure is the worst case scenario in any of these situations. Before we go on to the last slide, does anyone have any questions at this point? Man, it seems like we're doing a good job, Lou. No questions.
Okay, I got a question.
Joe's got one. Go for it, buddy.
Okay, all right. No equity based on an appraisal. Is that an appraisal now or after, when you have a large percentage of people who've gone to forbearance and whose home is also in foreclosure? So your equity, no, when it says no equity, I mean, what you have for equity may not be for equity a year or two down the road.
You might have equity.
Am I off on that?
You might have equity a year or two down the road.
Or, you know, I mean, through this COVID situation.
Yep. So
seems pretty gloomy, that's all.
Well, it's kind of gloomy.
Yeah, that's the whole point is, you know, it's a lot of information, but if you look at the majority percentage of that information and courses that it could take, most of it is bad. And, you know, not much good can come, if any, of going into a forbearance. You know, that's what we all need to realize, so we can educate our clients on what they can expect if they choose to go down that road. I saw a statistic this morning. There was a survey done. It says 73% of people surveyed felt more guilty about entering into a forbearance agreement than they would cheating on their spouse.
Okay.
And that tells me that most people surveyed would have guilt about going into the program because they could technically make the payment. The payment is designed for people who truly are in a financial hardship. It's not designed for everybody just to take advantage and take a vacation from their mortgage payments.
Right.
And if you choose to do that, John just showed you what those ramifications are, and they're steep.
So,
And there are ways to be able to get temporary debt relief that does not involve a forbearance. There are ways to do it. If the homeowner happens to have a HELOC on the property, for instance, they can call up and say, I just want to defer my payments. And the bank is going to be like, cool, because you're only paying interest anyway. So we're just going to add the interest to your principal and we'll just make more interest in 3 months. That's one that's very easy to do. That doesn't show up on anything, no sniff test. It doesn't buy you everything, but it does buy you a little bit of relief. Willie, you had a question.
Yeah, I'm sure it was covered at the beginning, but I wasn't able to get on. But what exactly, so someone chooses to be in forbearance, like from losing their job and wanting to reduce their payments or something?
Yeah, so again, forbearance is the ability to not make payments on your mortgage or any other loan due to financial hardship for a predetermined period of time, typically 3 months. The
Okay.
challenge comes in if you aren't able to make your payments for 3 months and you still don't have a job, how are you going to repay 4 months worth of mortgage payments? That's where the problem comes in. So let's talk a little bit about how to have that conversation. All right.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Gio.
What does HELOC means, and when does it apply to who? How do they choose to have HELOC? Or because you say that they are only paying interest, they are not paying to the principal of the home. So what is it? I don't know.
Could you repeat that question one more time?
What is HELOC? What is that?
Home equity line. Home
Oh.
equity line of credit.
Okay.
And the interest still rises, correct? Like they still account for interest?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, the thing to understand here, guys. There is no free ride in any of this. The banks are going to get their money. I can assure you.
I'm gonna add one thing real quick.
Yeah.
In regards to this, because I know that coming from a place of adding value, right? When you're making your care calls, I know that a lot of people have been using how low
Yes, James. My name is
right now.
Lisa.
And using that as a topic of conversation. Right now, everybody in the nation who owns a mortgage is thinking about refinancing if they haven't done it already, just because the media is telling them to do so, right? So everybody's considering it. Everybody wants to do it. Everybody wants to take advantage of a low interest rate. If somebody enters into
How low can they go, Louis?
That's a great question. I don't know if it can go much lower, because at that point, investors are going to lose their appetite and take the money and invest it in treasury bills and have no risk and make the same amount.
3% is a really attractive number.
It's a great rate, but the reality is if somebody goes into forbearance, they won't be able to refinance.
Right.
For a certain period of time. So they could be shooting themselves in the foot if they don't need to go through this. I've had this conversation with a couple people. I was able to talk them out of entering into forbearance, and we were able to refinance them and get them a great rate.
Excellent.
So had they done it, they would have been in a really bad spot and stuck with a higher interest rate. So something to consider. Again, yet another ramification that there is a waiting period if you enter into a forbearance program.
so John, can you
Just so you
role
guys
play
know.
We're going to do that in just a second, Catherine. That's
Okay,
actually the
'cause
next slide. James Hinson, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I had a quick question.
Go ahead.
Talking about rates, Louis, maybe you can answer this. And we're talking about investors. What is the appetite going to be whenever these forbearances start going into default? Is that going to cause the rates to go up, especially on the secondary market, as investors view these mortgages as slightly more risky?
Well, that's the reason why interest rates were staying kind of higher and really having a tough time coming down to probably where they should be, because there was no bailout plan for the mortgage investors. Everything was for the homeowner, and nothing was in place to protect the servicers or the investors on these mortgages. And so the stance of most lenders was, we don't want to overexpose ourselves at this point until we know what's going to happen. So we're going to keep our rates up and hopefully slow down the rate of application. And up until recently, there has been some initiating of programs from Congress to help loan servicers. That's allowed for the rates to come down a little bit. The comfort level of these investors is coming down. So we're moving in the right direction. And, at the end of the day, every loan servicer is going to do whatever they can to keep the homeowner out of foreclosure. That's like the last resort. But it's still going to happen in many, many, many cases. So, this is a reality. No matter how much money the government wants to throw at it, they can't put people back. Right?
Yep.
Only the economy can fix itself.
3.8 million people. That's not something that's going to happen overnight.
And that was probably just this week.
Yeah.
It's like it's over 40 million now, I think, right?
It's insane. It's insane.
Unreal.
So, Catherine, role plays. I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to go right into the next slide. All right.
Okay.
Ring, ring.
Hello.
Hi, is this Catherine?
It is.
Hey, Catherine, it's John McLeod. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, John.
By the
How
way,
are you?
we're sphere of influence right now, so you kind
Oh,
of.
okay. That's what I was, okay.
All right. Catherine, how you doing with the whole working at home thing?
We're not working right now.
Boom. Right into the script. You do your normal care call. How's it going working from home? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not working right now.
We're not working right now. We've both been let go.
So guess what? You've just identified yourself as somebody who is probably going to need help. All right. I have a lot of clients worried about the next several months.
I can understand that. We're very worried what's going to happen. We have mortgage payments. We've got the kids. We got a lot of things going on.
So, Catherine, how are you handling this? Are you going to be able? Are you going to be able to maintain your house payments and all of that? How's this affecting your family?
It's affecting us a lot, and we aren't sure if we can maintain our house payments or for how long. We're not really sure. We hear everything going on in the media. Not sure what's good for us to do. Should we take money out of this? And there's a lot of questions we have, John.
Catherine, thank you for bringing all that up. Many folks aren't aware that they can actually renegotiate some of their bills. Have you tried that yet?
We did call to renegotiate a lot of our credit cards, which was really good. Kind of consolidated some, paid some off, got rid of some things, and got rid of some debts. Some stuff that we just didn't need. We just thought we could do without. However, we're still, we've been a 2-income family. We have car payments that we're not able to negotiate, and we have our mortgage. And since both of us aren't working, John, I don't think we can renegotiate our mortgage.
And Catherine, I'm really concerned about some of the forbearance agreements I'm seeing. They are not favorable for the homeowners. If you're considering a forbearance, I would be more than happy to review the paperwork for you and with you to see if there's a way that you can do this that's not going to put you in a bigger financial burden.
Yeah, I don't understand forbearance. From what I understand, you just, you don't have to pay your mortgage for 3 months and then you can just go right in and start paying your payments again and everything's, just goes back to normal. And if that's the way it is, man, that's even getting a 3-month break. That's cool.
Excellent. And we're coming off script now. So what did we accomplish with the beginning of that?
Where'd we go? Okay, sorry.
Do they have adequate reserves? Not really.
No,
Right.
we do not have adequate reserves.
So the forbearance agreement is not going to work for somebody if they don't have adequate reserves. We already know their employment isn't stable.
Correct.
Okay. So now we're going to be looking to have another phone call. Okay.
Now, can I just say, when you're at this point, you're having a conversation with
Yep.
with someone and they're the point where, should we
now-
do a forbearance? Is that at the point where you would advise them at that point to talk to a financial advisor, or what would you really say?
That comes into the second call. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Now, keep in mind, these phone calls are very delicate. There's a lot of pride on the line. People they get embarrassed about the inability to be able to make payments like this. It's very difficult. It's a difficult pill to swallow when somebody has to say, I can't provide for my family. This is not something where you can go in like it's an expired listing and you know what, let me get this done for you, sign here, press hard, 3 copies. You cannot do that. This is a very delicate, multi-step conversation. The goal of the first conversation is just to assess, are they a candidate and do they have stable employment or reserves?
And if they have neither, what is your next
Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up another call. We're going to give some homework.
And
So
reserves meaning like retirement funds
savings?
It can be retirement funds.
or savings and stuff?
Yep.
Okay.
Now,
So
again, I'm going to go back to, I would have a very difficult time sleeping at night suggesting somebody take money out of their retirement when they know it is going to be worth 16 times more than it is today when they retire.
yeah.
Because their house is not going to be worth 16 times
Uh-huh.
more than it is now. It's not going to work that way. They're not going to hold it that long. It's very difficult for people to say they have to make a difficult choice between A and B. Saving the retirement is a better option in most cases. We're going to be getting their other professional advisors involved. The first step, homework. Let's see if a refi is even possible. And we're going to have the discussion regardless. The discussion is going to be had. And a lot of the reason for that is it answers any questions or concerns they might have. And, oh, we can't refi. Okay, we know that now. If you don't address it, they don't know it. So you address
now a question is, I said both parties are now unemployed. A bank's not going to refi, so you automatically know at that point. Is that,
we know that.
Right? So
they need to self-discover.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
This is coaching conversations with your clients, guys.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is not advice. This is coaching. They have to self-discover this stuff. So the homework is, you're going to call Lewis. Yes or no? Okay, good. Can't be done. You're going to call your creditors and you're going to send us a copy of your forbearance agreement. Okay.
If they've already done a forbearance.
Well, they may not have done it, but they may have the agreement in hand and
gotcha.
not signed
Okay.
it. So the goal is then next conversation, we want to explain the forbearance agreement. If you sign this, you have to make 4 payments on your 4th month. Or if you sign this, you have to make 2 payments a month for 3 months. Are you prepared to do that? Tracy Roach, you just raised your hand.
Hi, I'm sorry. It might be a question that's already been addressed.
No worries.
But I couldn't get on before now. Is in that forbearance agreement, who's going to be looking at it and what are we going to be looking for in it?
Okay, so when they send us the forbearance agreement, we are going to read it. And
Meaning you? Meaning who?
You, me, Catherine, Willie.
All right.
I am not going to speak for Lewis, but I'm going to throw out there that he would probably be willing to take a look at the forbearance agreement and offer his opinion from the lender's side.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that many people get stuck on, I have 3 months of no payments. This is awesome. Let me just sign the paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't read to know what they're going into.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand the ramifications of doing it. They do not know.
They just don't get it.
Of course.
They look very short term.
Very
Okay?
short. Yep.
So we will read it and offer our professional opinion.
Mhm.
And then let's talk to your financial planner, your accountant, your tax attorney, whoever you use,
Mhm.
and let's look at what options do you have for liquidity to avoid having to go into the forbearance.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then the next conversation is, what are we going to repay? We're going to repay the forbearance. We're going to repay your savings. We're going to repay your 401k. Wherever you borrow the money from, we've got to repay it. So you have to have a plan in place.
Mhm.
And then you want to point out the national forbearance numbers that we talked about at the beginning, 4 million homes and rising,
Mhm.
which is going to have an effect nationwide on property values at some point.
Yes, it will.
Review the value of the home and their equity position. Any change in employment. Do you have your job back? Now, if I'm not mistaken, Lewis, you can correct me on this, if it's a furloughed employee and now they are put back into service, that furlough does not count against them for qualifying, does it? Because it is exactly the same position. They get their job back.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
There are some exemptions to that, like, you know, depending on their nature of their pay.
Yep.
Compensation. I mean, if they're commission only, you know, they have to do an income average, there's going to be a problem there. But if they're an hourly or salary employee, they've been furloughed, now they're back to work, they're working 40 hours a week, lenders would look at it as if nothing happened.
Okay.
So I have a question regarding that, because if, you know, just like you said with the credit reporting, even though they're not allowed to, on the credit report, you're not allowed to put something in there saying that they're not paying because of the COVID. So there's this time frame that they're not making payments on a mortgage. You automatically know there's an issue, even though it's not reported as such. Will they do the same thing when it comes to your income in trying to qualify for a mortgage if you're furloughed? Or will they take into account that a lot of people who are furloughed are getting unemployment and that $600 a week? I mean, how is all of that played into the loan process, the income approval process with a loan?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the reality is it's more of a case by case basis. Like I said, you know, if somebody's in a sales related job and they haven't worked for 2 months, they're going to they'll allow them to qualify with that income once they go back to work, but they're still going to be subjected to an income average.
Right.
To consider is because we're not through this yet.
Mm-mm.
We don't know if this coronavirus is going to come back this winter. And these are questions that investors and lenders are having to consider, right? If they do a mortgage for somebody now and assume that coronavirus is never going to happen again, what happens if it does come back in a few months and they can't make their mortgage payment?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they really have to look at it from a make sense scenario. If somebody's a salary employee and they make $5,000 a month every single month, they go back to work and they're full time, we know they're going to get their $5,000 a month going forward. So it's a completely different story. In that case, it makes sense.
Okay.
So, you know, it's really tough. I mean, this is all uncharted territory. You know, and we've never had to deal with this before, and they're doing the best that they can. But at the same time, we have to remember that ultimately lenders are going to look out for themselves first and foremost, because it's a privilege. It's not a right to have a mortgage, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So there's a couple hands raised. Let me get through the last couple boxes and then we'll address all the questions at the end, okay? Thank you for your patience, guys. The final step is you're going to do your last call, your fourth call. You're going to determine how long they would stay in the house if there were no COVID. Because that is going to have a big bearing on whether or not they should be considering selling, or if forbearance is the right choice for them.
Exactly.
There are some cases it's the right choice. I'm going to stay here for 10 years. You're sure? Yes. Okay, then let's put together a plan for you to manage the forbearance process. You're going to sell it in 3 years. Take the equity now, because chances are in 3 years, we're going to have a different pricing in our market. It doesn't matter where it is. I know that everybody in Southwest Florida thinks that we're immune. We're not immune, okay? Because the people that are bringing their money here have it tied up in real estate in other parts of the country. So when other parts of the country have a depression of their real estate values, it will affect values here. It's a lag in this area of the country. It does happen. So you want to find out what their plans are. And if they are a shorter term, they may be better off selling now to capture the equity when we are at a peak and have low inventory than in the future. And you want to get their attorney, their CPA, and their financial planner involved, always in this case, before setting the listing appointment. Because this is a huge decision. They all need to be involved. So, by the way, guys, these will all be up on the page also. So, all right. So, Tracy.
I'm just really curious. I've not ever dealt with a forbearance, believe it or not, as old as I am.
Come on, 1,800 sales, you've never had one.
Oh. So anyway, so Louis, for you, I have a question.
Sure.
And it is, when someone goes into forbearance and they are able to get reemployed or go back to their job, or how much time, how quickly is that whatever was not paid during whatever amount of time, how quickly does that get paid back? Does it get paid back at the end of the loan? Do they raise their monthly payments immediately, or does it depend?
So
I put it back up on the screen because Tracy missed that part.
Sorry.
So,
That's
you
all
know,
right.
what I would say is this, coming from a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac standpoint, right? Conventional mortgage standpoint, 85% of the loans in the country
Mhm.
is going to apply. If they go into a forbearance, they still have to repay those payments.
Mhm.
Say payments $2,000 a month. They
Mhm.
go to 3-month forbearance. On that 4th month, they would have to pay not only that mortgage payment, but also the $6,000 in previous payments, all in one lump sum.
This is where
This is the rub, because these people don't have any reserves. If they're making $5,000 a month, obviously they're spending $5,000 a month. So as a result, where we have no reserves, we go back to work, we're behind in everything else. What is the likelihood of them ever being able to, without getting a gift from a parent or something, that if that were the case, they should be making their payments on a timely instead of forbearing? I don't know. This doesn't
Tracy,
make a lot of
that's
sense to me.
precisely why we're having this conversation.
And the reality is if the person does not have the means to bring it current, at that point in time, they can either look at it again. And keep in mind, forbearance was pre-COVID, right? This has been around for a long time.
Mhm.
And really it came into play when the housing crisis hit. And there was a lot of self-employed people who had their incomes negatively impacted.
Mhm.
Maybe for a short period of time, somebody's income, their business is slow, but if they ramp back up, maybe they can become current again, right? So in that kind of example, it would make sense. If the person cannot bring their loan current again, there is an option for them to apply for a loan modification. It is not guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
They can apply to have that balance that's due tacked on to the mortgage, re-amortized under a new mortgage. So they have to sign new loan documents. It's a modified loan, and then that would restart the clock. Now, what people don't realize is you have to prove an inability to not pay or not be able to pay your mortgage in order to be considered for a loan modification. Again, it's not a privilege. I mean, it's not a right to be able to say, I just don't want to make my payment anymore, throw it on the back end of the loan. It doesn't work that way. If somebody is, sitting on 20, 30, 40, 50, $60,000 or more in the bank, or they've got a 401k that they can leverage, right? They're supposed to do, us as responsible homeowners are supposed to do whatever we possibly can to preserve our home, our credit, and everything else, right? If that person has resources, and when they go to apply for that modification and they say, hey, okay, you need to show us your pay stubs, you need to show us your bank statements, your 401k statement, and all that stuff, and they say they have money, they're going to say, sorry, you have to bring this current.
Right.
Or you're going to be in
Now, you got to bring it current now.
Now.
Well, those aren't the people I'm talking about. The people I'm talking about is that take this on thinking it's it's a Band-Aid, and then when they get to the 4th month and they have to make that payment plus everything that they haven't paid, and they have no money, it's like, why even do that? I don't get it.
That's precisely why. And Tracy, I'm going to have this video tomorrow. It will be posted. So watch the first 30 minutes because we cover the conversation, what it looks like, the entire map. Joe, I'll get to you in just a second. The entire map on what can happen and what's likely to happen. And when you're walking your clients and your sellers and prospects and everybody through this process, with the idea of letting them come to the conclusion on their own.
Gotcha.
Okay, we don't want to tell them, don't do this.
Right, of course. Right.
We want to walk them through. Here is the 14 things that can happen. And by the way, of the 14, like 2 of them are good. That's the realism on it. So it will be available tomorrow. Go back and watch it. Sheila, you're like changing the entire time. First time you had no makeup on, now then you come back. Next time you had a white shirt, now you just changed again. So she's going on a listing appointment tonight. So Joe Cotto. Are you still there, Joe? You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah. This whole thing has been very sobering. So I called Bank of America this morning. First I was going to check to see about their refinancing, but the whole time was way too long. But I did speak to a person, and one of the things they asked me about forbearance, and I was just kind of listening to her, and she said that they can do a forbearance 3 to 6 months, but I have to be ready to pay within the next 3 months when we restart. And it's the same thing that Tracy was saying. It's like a Band-Aid.
How many?
It's like, it was crazy. It's like, wow.
How many short-term decisions, when you are only looking at the short term, are truly beneficial long term?
Yeah, nothing. Yeah.
It's very, very, very few of them. So this is an important topic, and it's going to be a difficult conversation to have. That being said, you have that conversation with somebody and you save them $700,000 in their retirement account.
Yeah.
How are they going to think what are they going to think of you when this is over? We talk about all the time. Mario gets it. He's smiling. You know, we talk about this all the time, guys. We come from contribution to this company. It is service first, sales second. So
Amen.
you're going out and you're finding people and solving a serious problem for them by asking a simple question. How's it going working at home?
So you know, I as long as I've been in business, it's probably surprising that I hadn't run across this either. But
Tracy, that was funny, by the way, because
Oh,
Willie's
was
only
it?
been in business for a couple months.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I didn't realize he was. See, I'm so naive. I'm going, wow, I didn't think he was in the business that. Oh, Willie, you're so funny.
So
I've actually, Lewis kind of knows a little about this person. I don't know if I talked to you, John, but I called it expired. I've talked to him twice now, and he was originally furloughed, and now he's lost his job. His wife still works, and I've talked to him, and he was supposed to talk to his bank this week, and I was going to do a follow-up call, and I was just kind of wondering if this kind of is in the same boat.
this sounds like an ideal person for you to have this conversation with.
I was thinking about it, but I'm still a little loopy of how to handle it.
Well, go back over the weekend and rewatch this. And it's going to take me to tomorrow to get it up there, but I will post this. I will also post the pictures, and so you've got the flow chart and everything. Lewis, go ahead.
I just, you know, Willie bringing it up, I just realized something that I didn't think about in any of us leading up to this training. Something that goes back to when I was working for Chase and dealing with the housing crisis and everybody trying to get loan modifications. I forgot that there was a staggering number of people who were maybe in like this guy's position Willie was just talking about, who lost their job. And, you know, one of the things that's a well-kept secret is the loan modification process also is not for everybody. Believe it or not, you can actually make too little money to be modified. See, the government is the one who sets the standard for loan modification. And the box that they paint is literally, it's so tiny. And you probably have known of people back in the housing crisis that were complaining, you know, Wells Fargo didn't modify my loan. Chase didn't modify my loan. Well, Bank of America. Well, it's because the government, you know, created this tiny little box. So if you made too little money and they modified your loan and the modified terms of the loan was still not considered affordable by the government standard, you're not getting a loan modification either. So you can make too much money and not get a mod, or you can make too little money and not be working and not have any income and they won't modify you. Now you're in foreclosure. And that was a lot of problems. So this is something to consider, that, like, you know, Willie, this guy, you know, depending on what his forecast is of the possibility of getting back to work, he could be put in a position, if he goes through a furlough and then tries to modify and he's still not working, he might not fit into that modification box. They might have to say, well, your next alternatives are a deed in lieu of foreclosure, which is, I don't know if you guys know, but it's basically giving your house back to the bank, or it's selling. If you have no equity, it's a short sale, or defaulting on your mortgage. So, you know, if somebody's not making income, like Tracy, you were asking, if somebody doesn't have an income stream, there's a modification process, but they likely would not get modified either.
How did they ever get approved for this property to begin with? I have to wonder. I mean, never mind, COVID aside, I mean,
Yeah.
COVID aside, I mean, one wrong step, you know, an injury or something, you get ill for some amount of time. It's frightening to me.
It
that's
is
why
frightening, but if you look at it, that's the way the majority of the world is. when you look at people in
Oh,
our
I
country,
understand, but-
I'd say, what is it, 93% of the
Here's the
United
number.
States
I
lives
just
week by week?
I just looked it up. It's 78% of the U.S. workers live paycheck to paycheck.
78%. There you go.
78%.
But see, this is why it's a great position for you guys to educate them about this stuff, because as a homeowner, they still preserve the ability to sell the house. And, you know, if they've got equity, great. They can position themselves. Now they got a nest egg. Hopefully they'll get them through this COVID to where they're back to work, you know, if they're rent during that time frame. At least they have that. You know, if somebody's renting right now and they get furloughed, they have no option. So, you know, being able to sell their house right now, like John was saying, is a great consideration that people really need to be educated about.
Mhm.
Or going down this rabbit hole of nothing but bad.
Yep.
So sad.
Excellent. So, guys, was this helpful?
Oh, amazing.
It's amazing.
Well, so
Awesome.
now I know I
Yeah.
have another question, though. That
We'll be
I
listening
don't
to
know.
it over the weekend again, for
Yes,
sure.
fascinating.
So what would be a good way or something good to, I don't want to say advertise because it's not to post, to put on social media or whatever, as an information, some type of an ad, a paid ad, to bring something about COVID, this to light for people to look at, to ask questions?
Right off the bat, I think of a headline like "Considering Forbearance?" ? Know the facts, make an educated decision. And I wouldn't say know the facts before you make a decision. Make an educated decision.
Mm-hmm.
Brian was just mouthing something, but he was muted.
Because there's a lot of people in this situation. I don't think people
Oh.
realize how many
I
thousands
was
and
talking
thousands
to
of people.
myself, and what I said was I really like that one. And if I do an ad or anything on forbearance, I'm probably stealing it.
That's what it's there for.
All good ideas are all stolen from someone else anyway. So.
Listen, I am a firm believer there's no
There you
such
go.
thing as original thought anymore. So guys,
R&D.
let me leave you with this. Like I said, I'll have this. I'll be in here in the morning. I will get it posted tomorrow morning. All the slides that you saw, the video will be reposted and everything. Yeah, I appreciate all of you guys taking time on a Friday evening, on a holiday weekend to make yourselves more educated on a very difficult topic. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me that you guys are here. So thank you for that. And Louis, I appreciate you and I appreciate your expertise, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
John, thank you very much for taking the time. Very educational. Louis, thank you very much. It's incredible how much, what an asset we have here.
John,
Tracy, this will be posted on the Gulf Coast Group Facebook page, all right?
Thank you.
So, and if you're not on it, Mario and James, I think I need to add you guys.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I don't think I'm
I'll
on
get
that.
you guys added to it. That's our coaching page for our team, and we refer to ourselves as a team here. That is where we as a coaching group get together and we get to throw all of our stuff up on a wall and see what sticks. We also have some very talented people that lurk on that page, that go above and beyond people like Louis or Becky or Adrian. Janet Falk is a member of the page and contributes. For those who don't know who Janet is, not only is she one of the major investors in a number of market centers, ours being one of them, she's also one of the agents that was featured in the book Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Is an incredible individual, and she is monitoring what we do on there, and she loves what's happening, and you'll see her contribute from time to time as well. When you see her, feel free to ask her a question. Guys, I'm going home to make dinner.
John,
Yeah.
real quickly, with Monday being a holiday, are we still doing coaching in the morning?
No, we are back on Tuesday morning at 7:30. That link will go out to everybody tomorrow morning. I apologize for not getting into it today.
John,
Tracy.
sent you an email. I sent an email to the appraiser. I copied you on it.
Okay.
So his name is Mark Anthony Gizzi. So I just want you to be prepared for that if you, to set up
Perfect.
that opportunity for us to have him in.
Perfect. I'm going to hit stop recording.